Hi folks, I'm Woody. Welcome back to the shed and the Birnie Flying Circus. The circus are really looking forward to the summer of 22. There are a whole load of fly-ins scheduled for our part of the world. The Kirriemuir fly-in, Perth, Newhall, Longside, Glenforsa, Easter, not to mention everything that's going on south of the border. So it looks as if things were shaping up to be a pretty good year from basically May through to the end of September. We'd had a pretty wet spring, but by the end of April everything was just about dried out. All the mud and ruts had been filled in, and we were really looking forward to having some fun. I got the roof off for some free air conditioning, and the Moss Trooper got a smoke system going again. I think I pretty much got the constituents of the witch's brew for the smoke oil pretty much sorted out. I reckon it looks pretty good. All I need now is a display license. Our first event of the year was the Longside Fly-In, which is a rare event for reasons that you'll understand in a moment or two. But well done to Cameron and Rory for setting it all up and making sure we had a really great day out. And then the inevitable happened. Rico made it to Glenforsa, none of the rest of us did, and you can see why from this picture. Same weather systems pretty much affected the rest of the country too. Although, just for a change, actually the south of England was pretty good and we just caught it up to the north, and there's a reason for that. We're up in the north, all the southern softies south of the Great Divide, and unfortunately that is a big problem for us, because with the prevailing southwesterly wind, essentially those mountains are always covered in cloud if there's any weather around. Luckily where we are, we're in the rain shadows, so we don't get too much of the bad weather, and we have nice blue skies most of the time, nice clear weather. But everyone else is south of the Great Divide, like I said, down south, and we just can't reach them. This is my attempt to get down to the Perth fly-in, and I'm approaching the ridge just to the north of Braemar. Now, admittedly, this weather does look pretty grim, but it's scattered low stuff. I can see clear air above it, and it looks like there's some clear air ahead as well. It looks like it's brightening up a bit. As I cross the ridge, it's quite clear that down in the glen, it's really not much better than where I've just left. There's still brighter patches ahead, but I really don't have too much confidence that it's going to work out for me. So I'm keeping my eyes on the mirror and making sure the door doesn't close behind me. Now the gaps in the cloud above me are getting increasingly few and far between, and my plan at the moment is to get across the next ridge, and then I know that there's a valley down to the left hand side, down towards the southeast, which I should be able to get down and avoid the worst of the high ground. But as you can see here, as I approach it, it's quite obvious that the weather down in that direction is just as bad as everywhere else, so I think it's just time to turn around and go back. Having kept an eye on the weather behind me, I know the door's still open, I can get round, and there isn't too much of a drama. But you can quite see how people get themselves trapped. To go up into clearer air might have been an option, but then how do you get down again if you have a problem? Really not a pleasant place to be. And I just kissed this off when I went back home. Really wasn't worth it. And back up north, here's the bright blue sky we're used to seeing in our neck of the woods. Unfortunately this year it's also been overcome by some very strong winds. We've had far more windy weather recently over this summer than I can remember having before, and it really has put the stopper on a lot of the flying that we intended to do. And although it's been clear down south, we just haven't been able to get over the mountains or even off the airfield at Easterton to go and enjoy it. All very frustrating. As we haven't been able to fly, we might as well just get on and do some other housekeeping. Pete and Bob has got ready for its annual inspection. The wings on the Cessna are still being worked on in Rudolph's workshop, and I had one or two jobs to do on the Minisport. So time wasn't wasted, it just could have been better spent. You saw something of the work going on the Cessna's wings in one of the earlier videos. Rudolph's been doing it pretty much single-handedly now for about 8 months. But the wings are back on the aeroplane now, the ailerons are being fitted, so with a bit of luck she'll be airborne again fairly soon.
Can't find the hole.
No, I've got the hole here, but
There's the access to the bishop.
We don't need this.
It's the amount of paint on your face which is quite amazing. You're talking about wasting paint spraying all over that, you're spraying on you. Yeah, keep smiling, otherwise I can't see you.
Oh, you're not. Good God! Don't publish. Holy shit! No! Don't publish. Would you? Well, yeah.
In fact, it's probably better if I just get a big hammer and whack it.
Look, we're meant to be working on other aeroplanes, not this one. This one's serviceable.
we did all this yesterday, but unfortunately Steve, when he was holding the camera, forgot that the pictures go in that little hole at the front.
Oh,
and
was
if you
he filming
with
himself?
your fingers, then it doesn't work that well.
Oh, right. Okay. Oh, Robbie's obviously gone. He's gone, yeah. I've got to go. He's had enough, he says.
Now what's going on here? Well, these legs belong to David Cart, and this is November Yankee, out of which the legs are sticking. I did say to you earlier on that perhaps it's a good idea to have a good look at November Yankee in this clip, because you may not see it again. Well, this is November Yankee probably for the last time, and in the background there's an emergency helicopter. This is the reason November Yankee's in the field. The engine shat the bed whilst he was on his way to Glenforsa, and obviously it's not in the best shape to fly, so he had to put it into a field. This is the Sky Demon plot of November Yankee's final minutes. As you can see, Orson made a great job of finding the only field that was available to him for quite some considerable distance. Had he not made it into that field, then, well, we'll see in a second, but basically here he is in company with the crew of the rescue helicopter, who responded to his call on one of these things, which is an emergency beacon, personal one. Had he not been able to raise some assistance using one of those, you can see around that field there are very few other options, and he could have had a very, very uncomfortable few hours waiting to be rescued if things had all gone horribly wrong. It might even actually have ended up worse. Here he is in the field with his recovery team a couple of days later, and here they are reducing November Yankee to kit form prior to loading it onto a truck. Not an easy job, certainly not something you want to be doing in a hurry. And here's a photograph of the engine with one or two bits missing. And if you're interested in a kit form Jodel, get in touch with the man of the moment, David Cart. I'm sure he'd be very interested to hear from you. As you can see, as the summer went on, the weather over the mountains didn't much improve. We're still cut off from the rest of the country, but we still have good weather to the north of the Grampians, which we can enjoy by taking the odd trip to the beach. Some people take a beach ball, some people take buckets and spades. I take the Minisport. This is a weather effect which is peculiar to the east coast and northeast coast of Scotland, and that's the Har. Basically, it's sea fog. When the weather's calm in the summer and the conditions are right, this just drifts in and can hang around all day, sometimes several days, blocking out the sky and just making it thoroughly miserable. Whereas just a few miles to the south, glorious sunshine. This is an attempt to get to Easter, which is just north of Inverness. And you can see that the coast is really quite claggy. It's quite difficult to find the airfield at the best of times. And if anybody else is around, of course, they're having similar trouble. So once we get to the vicinity of the airfield, you need to keep a really good lookout to make sure that no one else is trying to do exactly the same thing as you, concentrating on the ground but coming the opposite way at the same height. Can get a bit tricky. Part of the reason for the circus existence is so that we can enjoy ourselves socially. Rudolph and his wife Stephanie laid on a silver service lunch, as you can see here, to celebrate Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II's Platinum Jubilee. There were a few of the circus members who couldn't make it, so there were one or two invited guests to make up the numbers, and we all had a great time, and thank you very much indeed, Rudolph and Stephanie, for the effort you put into it. Very much enjoyed. Thank you. Whilst I waited for the fog to clear, I thought it was time to do the annual inspection on the Minisport. As you can see, there's one or two things that cropped up. The exhaust hanger was quite worn, and the stud that holds it against the engine mount and the engine was also quite worn, to the extent where it's about to break, I think. I made a new stud by turning down a 12mm bolt at one end, and that seems to have fixed that issue. The other problem, of course, was the very worn hole in the exhaust hanger, which I fixed by putting a sleeve in it and spot welding 2 washers on each side. We'll see how that works out. May not be a long-term fix. If I turn the propeller, I noticed there was a very slight rattling sound coming from inside the spinner. So when I took it off, I realised that the end of the tube which steadies the spinner at the forward end had essentially knocked a hole into the back plate to the degree where the retaining collar had broken off, and that's what I could hear rattling around inside. So a repair to that was relatively simple. I basically just built the collar back up on the accessible side of the spinner, and as you can see here, I used a suitable piece of aluminium just to centre everything up whilst the fiberglass was setting off. It seemed to have worked quite well. I took the tail wheel off to inspect the bearings, and good job that I did, because as I removed it, one of the bearings just fell apart. They're very difficult to check in situ. If the wheel's still rotating fine, then there's not much more you can check. But if you take it out, it becomes obvious that there may be something not quite right. So all I had to do there was source a new tail wheel. Those that were available locally, they might have done the job at a bit of a stretch, and Roland found something lying around in the back of his shed that he thought might work. But in the end, I just replaced the bearings, which was a simple job to do, and it means that all the fittings which are currently in place can still be used. The biggest issue I had was with oil. I did a 50-hour oil change, which includes changing the filter and the spark plugs, and this was the oil that I used. It's 10x30 4T racing oil, which I thought would be feeding the engine something akin to caviar. Constant overheating. Really couldn't work out what the problem was. The oil seemed to be the right grade. I've been using it before through the winter, although obviously colder temperatures, not so much of a heat problem. But this is the oil I should have been using. The viscosity grade looks the same as the liquid gold that I was using over the winter, but apparently the liquid gold is for a water-cooled engine, and the Garden 4T is for an air-cooled engine. Doesn't say anything about that on the packaging, so unless you know that, then you finish up with the same problem that I had, with the oil basically turning to water when it got hot. Not pleasant. I haven't damaged the engine, but it could quite easily have been a major problem and a bit of a showstopper. Right, enough of the boring stuff. Let's go have some more fun. Now, it may look as if we're just playing war games here, but there is a serious side to this. Rat & Terrier gives you the opportunity to practice navigation, lookout, handling skills, assessing relative motion, energy management, metal dead reckoning, unless you're like me and you count on your fingers. All these things are really useful to not only expand your ability to fly the aeroplane under demanding conditions, but also to improve your lookout and navigation to a degree which a lot of people, let's face it, don't practice anywhere near enough. So from that point of view, it's a valuable exercise and it's really good fun.